Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
A good friend of mine has about 4 years ago inherited the house of his grandparents. He decided to live there for the time being till he has decided what to do with the house. He grew up in it, so he did not really want to sell it. Not even a week after he moved in, he got a visit from a neighborhood committee. They said they are the 3 board members of the HOA and are here so he can sign his membership papers. They were extremely nosy and rude. For example, one tried to get into the garage without so much as asking. When he stopped him and asked him where he wanted to go, he had the audacity to say, "I need to check your garage to see if everything there is in order. I have a right to do this weekly, and denying me access is an offense that will cost a fine." He then had enough of their audacity and kicked him out of the house. While doing so, one of the board members shoved some papers into his face and told him he needed to sign this right now. He would live there a week already, and these papers had to be signed before moving in. Once they were gone, he took a look at the papers. They were so ridiculous and gave the HOA rights that were simply unreal. They had, for example, a right to visit your home weekly and check things like if you do not use a garage for storage, if you do not have gasoline in containers in your garage, and same goes for gas. You had to mow your lawn every week. Snow had to be shoveled every 2 hours if it snowed, starting at 5 o'clock in the morning. You could not park more than 1 car on your grounds, except inside the garage, and a ton of other nonsense. A few days later, they came back and asked him why he did not sign the papers yet. They also wanted to check the garage again, but this time he would not even let them in, and he told them he would never become a member of their stupid club. To them, that meant war. Within a week, they had sent him fines worth of $1,000, several of which were for denying them access to his home, each worth $250. My friend simply did not take them seriously and used their stupid letters to help fire his grill. Then came the day where they went extremely too far. He came back and one of the board members had broken into his garage, stood in it, and was writing things down on his notepad. But that was not even the worst part. He had 2 wonderful oak trees in the front of the house. They had been planted by his great-grandparents when they were newlyweds and moved into this house. The HOA was in the process of taking them down. They had called a professional crew for this. One was already so damaged, basically all twigs were already down. It was just a stump that was left. The other one they had just started with, and he then lost it. He told the tree crew to stop right now and explain to them that he was the owner and what they did was highly illegal. They had no idea since the board member claimed that these trees were in violation of the rules, since supposedly too many leaves went to the neighbor's garden. He had told him that there was no legal reason to put them down, but the board member claimed that he had given his okay because the trees were in violation of rules of the HOA. He looked it up later and they actually had a bylaw that if a garden produces more than 1 40-liter sack of leaves within 2 weeks, the garden owner needs to take down the offending trees within 2 weeks. He later called the cops on the board members for trespassing, breaking, and entering. They actually had used a bolt cutter to get into the garage. He had it always closed with a big bike lock after they had tried to get in it twice before. The process must have been glorious. Not only did they have to repay him for the lock and the tree, which was worth a ton of money, north of $50K if I remember right, plus damages for the second tree. He had a professional tree person look after it so all the damage healed properly, which alone cost over $1K. But these idiots actually thought the trial would have been unfair, and they tried to fight it, which probably cost him an additional 10 to 15K in lawyers and court costs. All in all, this trial must have cost him over $120K. Then he went to yet another civil court and sued him for emotional damage. He told him how much these trees meant to him since his great-grandparents had planted them, seeds from the home country. He really laid it on as thick as he could. Plus, he felt threatened by the HOA and can hardly sleep because, well, he always fears they will try to get into his house. The court actually bought it and gave him $500K plus the costs for a state-of-the-art alarm system, so he can feel safe again in his own home. So, put all together, he cost the HOA nearly $750K. They had to file for bankruptcy and get a person to check the books so my friend will get his money. The best part is the last one though. The mediator found out that these three jerks have been defrauding the HOA for well over 10 years and were giving out as many fines as they possibly could so they could use it to bolster their income. All three had to sell their houses so they could pay out my friend. Now he's for most people one of the favorite people living there and he constantly gets invited over for grilling and whatnot. You see, most people never wanted the HOA in the first place, but the board member practically forced him to sign the contract, claiming it would not be optional. And if they did not sign before moving in, it would be a $500 fine. Only 6 of the over 50 members actually wanted this HOA, and people think they did give part of the action as reward for spying out their neighbors to find violations. I have the perfect story for you, but first, let me introduce myself. My name is Sarah, and I'm a college student in my early 20s. I love socializing with people, going out with my friends, and doing things that make me happy. One day, my world was turned upside down by a person who tried to ruin my life. This is my story of how I got my pro-revenge. It all started on a sunny day in June, when I met this girl named Lisa. We had a mutual friend and hit it off instantly. Lisa and I started hanging out and having a lot of fun. But little did I know that she was jealous of me and she would do anything to bring me down. One day we were all at a party and Lisa overheard me talking about my plans to travel to Europe the following month. She immediately got jealous and started saying how she wished she could afford to travel too. I tried to be sympathetic and suggested that she could save up money and travel someday too. But that wasn't enough for Lisa. She started spreading rumors about me, saying that I was a snob who thought I was better than everyone else because I was going to Europe. I couldn't believe it. I had never said anything like that, and I couldn't understand why Lisa was doing this to me. At first, I tried to ignore it, but the rumors kept spreading, and soon everyone in our social circle started to believe them. People started treating me differently, and I felt like an outcast. I knew I had to do something, so I confronted Lisa about the rumors. Lisa, I need to talk to you. Why are you spreading these rumors about me? I asked her. What rumors? Lisa said, pretending like she didn't know what I was talking about. You know exactly what I was talking about, Lisa. You've been telling everyone that I'm a snob who thinks she's better than everyone else because I'm going to Europe. I said, feeling angry. Oh, that. Well, it's true, isn't it? Lisa said with a smug look on her face. No, it's not. I never said anything like that. Well, I heard you say it. Lisa said, shrugging her shoulders. That's not true, Lisa, and you know it. Why are you doing this to me? I don't know. I guess I just don't like you. And that's when I knew that Lisa was a toxic person who didn't deserve to be my friend. So I decided to cut ties with her and focus on my own happiness. But Lisa wasn't done with me yet. A few weeks later, I received a text telling me that some purchases were made using my credit card. That was definitely not me. Then I received a message later that day from a mutual friend between me and Lisa that she, Lisa, was behind these shady purchases. Clearly, she had stolen my credit card information and had made several unauthorized purchases with it. I couldn't believe it. How could she do something so despicable? I immediately called my bank and reported the fraud, but I knew I had to take matters into my own hands too. I texted Lisa back and told her that I knew what she had done and that she needed to return my money immediately. You're crazy if you think I'm going to give you any money back. You should have been more careful with your credit card information. Lisa texted me back. Of course, she was in plain and obvious telling me that so I don't take her text as evidence, but she made sure I got her message. I was furious. I couldn't believe that Lisa was trying to turn this around on me. And that's when I decided to get my pro-revenge. I went to the police and filed a report against Lisa for credit card fraud. I had saved all of our text messages as evidence, and I was sure that justice would be served. But Lisa was clever. She had used the virtual private network, VPN, to hide her location and identity while committing the crime. The police were unable to trace her and the case was closed due to the lack of evidence. But I didn't give up. I knew I had to get creative if I wanted to get my revenge. I started by spreading the word about what Lisa had done. I told all of our mutual friends and acquaintances about the fraud, warning them to be careful around her. I also posted about it on social media, making sure that everyone knew what kind of person Lisa really was. Lisa was furious. She started sending me threatening messages, telling me to stop talking about her, but I didn't back down. I continued to spread the word, and soon Lisa's reputation was in shambles. People started avoiding her and she became an outcast, just like I had been. One day I was out shopping with my friends when Lisa spotted me. She stormed up to me. "I told you to stop talking about me," she yelled. "I have every right to talk about what you did to me," I said calmly. "That's it. I've had enough of you," Lisa said before trying to throw hands. But I was ready for her. I knew how to defend myself. I dodged her punch and then kicked her in the stomach. Lisa fell to the ground gasping for air. She tried to get up, but I kicked her in the shin, making her fall back down again. "I am calling the police," Lisa said, tears streaming down her face. "Go ahead. I have nothing to hide." The police arrived and Lisa tried to tell them that I had attacked her for no reason, but I had witnesses who had seen her try to punch me first. The police arrested Lisa for assault and battery, and she was charged with a misdemeanor. From that day on, Lisa disappeared from my life, and I never heard from her again. I had gotten my pro-revenge, and I had shown her that I wasn't someone she could mess with. I learned a valuable lesson about toxic people and the importance of standing up for yourself. And now, I'm stronger and more confident than ever before. I woke up one morning to a knock on my door. I groggily stumbled out of bed, rubbed my eyes, and answered the door. And to my surprise, I was greeted by a group of people holding clipboards and wearing matching polo shirts. "Good morning, ma'am. We are from the Homeowners Association," said the leader of the group, a middle-aged woman with a stern expression. "We've received complaints about your yard and we need to have a word with you." My heart sank. I had only moved into the neighborhood a few months ago and I was already getting in trouble with the HOA. I knew they could be strict, but I didn't expect them to come knocking on my door before I even finished my morning coffee. Okay, come on in," I said, opening the door wider and gesturing for them to enter. The group got into my living room and took a seat on my couch. The leader of the group introduced herself as Karen, a fake name, and proceeded to pull out a stack of papers from her clipboard. "Miss Johnson, we have received several complaints about your front yard. It seems you haven't been following the guidelines outlined in our community bylaws," Karen said. "I'm sorry, I didn't know there were specific guidelines for my yard," I said, feeling embarrassed. "Well, there are. We expect our residents to follow them," she said before launching into a long list of rules and regulations for my yard. From the type of grass I was allowed to plant to the height of my hedges. As she spoke, I couldn't help but feel like I was being scolded like a child. I had always been a free spirit, and the idea of being told what to do with my own property made me feel trapped. "I understand the rules, but I feel like some of them are a bit excessive," I said, trying to reason with her. "I'm sorry you feel that way, Miss Johnson, but these rules are in place to ensure the atheistic integrity of our community," Karen said, not budging an inch. I could tell this conversation wasn't going to go anywhere, so I thanked them for their time and showed them out. As I closed the door, I let out a deep sigh. I knew I had to do something about my yard, but I didn't want to conform to the HOA's strict guidelines. I had always been a bit of a rebel. Growing up, I was the type of kid who would dye her hair bright pink and wear mismatched clothes just to stand out. My parents were always supportive of my individuality, and they encouraged me to express myself however I wanted. But after my parents passed away when I was 25, I felt lost. They had been my rock, and without them, I didn't know how to be myself. I bounced around from job to job, never really finding my passion. It wasn't until I moved to this neighborhood that I felt like I could start fresh. As I looked out at my yard, I knew I had a decision to make. I could either conform to the HOA's rules and regulations, or I could stand up for my individuality and do something that felt true to myself. A few weeks went by and I found myself spending every spare moment working on my yard. I planted wildflowers and painted my mailbox bright purple. I even hung a homemade wind chime made out of old spoons and forks on my porch. As I was watering my plants one day, Karen from the HOA came by for an impromptu inspection. She looked around, her eyes scanning every inch of my yard. I could tell she was disapproving of my wild, eclectic style, but I didn't let it bother me. I was proud of my yard, and I wasn't going to let anyone tell me how to express myself. Miss Johnson, I'm afraid your yard is still not up to par with our community standards, Karen said with a condescending tone. I took a deep breath before responding. I understand your concerns, Karen, but I believe that everyone should have the freedom to express themselves, even if it doesn't fit into a strict set of guidelines. She scoffed. Well, that may be true, but not in this community. We have a certain standard to uphold. We can't have residents flaunting the rules. I could feel my blood boiling. Who was she to tell me how to live my life? I knew I had to stand up for myself. Karen, I appreciate your position, but I am not willing to sacrifice my individuality for the sake of conformity. I am willing to work with the HOA to find a compromise that works for everyone, but I will not change who I am to fit into a mold. Karen looked taken aback, clearly not used to residents pushing back against the HOA's authority. She took a moment to compose herself before responding. Very well, Miss Johnson. We will take your request into consideration, but I can't make any promises, Karen said before turning and walking away. I stood there for a moment feeling a mix of pride and anxiety. I had stood up for myself, but I didn't know how the HOA would react. Over the next few weeks, I waited anxiously for the HOA's response. I continued to work on my yard, adding more flowers and even putting up a small birdhouse. I felt like I was creating a space that reflected who I was, and I wasn't willing to give that up. One day I received a letter from the HOA, and I hesitated before opening it, unsure of what it would say. But when I read the contents, I felt a rush of relief. The letter stated that the HOA had reviewed my request and had decided to make an exception for my yard. They acknowledged that while my yard didn't fit into their strict guidelines, it added to the community's diversity and character. I couldn't believe it. I had stood up for myself and it had paid off. I felt like I could finally breathe, knowing that I could be myself in my own home. As I sat in my yard taking in the beauty of my wild flowers and the sound of my homemade wind chime, I felt like I had finally found my place in the world. I knew that I would always be a bit of a rebel, but that was okay. I had learned that it was possible to be true to yourself while still being a part of a community. From that day on, I continued to live in my own unique way, but I also found ways to connect with my neighbors. I hosted a block party and everyone loved my homemade guacamole. I even joined the HOA's gardening club, where I shared my love of wildflowers with others. I realized that even though I had once felt like an outsider in this community, I had found a way to make it my own, and that was something worth celebrating. It was just another busy Friday night at La Bella Cucina, the Italian restaurant where I work as a manager. The clinks of cutlery, the chatter of happy diners, an aroma of garlic and herbs filled the air. I was making my usual rounds, ensuring everything was running smoothly when a new customer walked in. He was a middle-aged man, sharply dressed with an air of arrogance around him. He didn't wait to be seated, and instead, he chose the best table in the restaurant, which was reserved for another party. "Excuse me, sir," I began politely. "This table is reserved. May I offer you another one?" He scoffed. "Do you know who I am? I'll sit where I please. Give me your best wine and a chef special." I tried to reason with him, but he wouldn't budge. Reluctantly, I complied, hoping to avoid a scene. The evening went from bad to worse. The man complained about everything. The wine was too warm, the food was too bland, and he was especially rude to the staff. Each time I apologized and tried to accommodate his demands. Then he crossed the line. He snapped his fingers at Maria, one of our waitresses, and he demanded, "Give me the chef. I need to teach him how to cook." Maria, visibly shaken, nodded and went to fetch the chef. Chef Antonio, a kind-hearted and passionate cook, came out to speak with the man. "Is there a problem with your meal, sir?" he asked politely. "Yes," the man bellowed. "This is unacceptable. I wanted 3 made, and I won't be paying for this trash." Antonio's face reddened. "Sir, I assure you, our dishes are prepared with the utmost care and quality ingredients." "I don't care, do as I say," the man demanded. Frustrated, Antonio returned to the kitchen. I tried to calm the man down, offering a discount, but he was furious. He stood up, knocking his chair over, and he started yelling, attracting the attention of the entire restaurant. "This is a worst restaurant. I'll make sure it gets shut down," he threatened. It was then that another customer who had been quietly observing stood up. "Sir, you're causing a scene. Please sit down." The man turned towards him. "Mind your own business." The situation was out of control. I had no choice but to call the police. Within minutes, 2 officers arrived. "What seems to be the problem here?" one officer asked. Before I could respond, the entitled man shouted, "I am being harassed by these incompetent fools." The other patrons started speaking up, telling the officers what had really happened. The officers listened to both sides, they spoke with the staff and other customers, and it became clear who was at fault. "Sir, you need to calm down or we will have to take you in for disturbing the peace," one officer warned the man. Instead of calming down, the man became even more aggressive, pushing one of the officers and trying to punch him. And that was the last straw. The officers handcuffed him and led him out of the restaurant. After he was gone, I apologized to the patrons and offered them complimentary desserts. My husband and I have always been the kind to lend a helping hand. So when his brother and his girlfriend needed a place to stay, we didn't hesitate. Big mistake, as we would soon find out. Husband's brother and his girlfriend weren't exactly the best house guests. They had a knack for breaking every rule we set. The last straw was when they borrowed our car without our permission. Husband and I decided it was time for them to go. We were packing up their stuff when my husband found something alarming in one of their bags. A tiny baggie with white powder. We had no choice but to call the police. The officer confirmed our worst fears. It was an illegal substance. My husband was furious, and he told his brother and his girlfriend they were permanently banned from our house and our car. Fast forward a few days, husband was about to take our son to the bus stop when he realized our car wasn't in the parking lot. Panic ensued and he called the police to report the stolen vehicle. The brother then texted, claiming he had used the car to go for a court-ordered drug test. But how did he get the car? Well, we soon realized the spare key was missing from my purse. When we confronted the brother, he said he left the car near the courthouse. A quick check with the police proved that was a lie. Days passed with no sign of our car, then we got a call from the police. They had found our license plate on another car during an arrest. Turns out the brother had sold our car to a junkyard for a measly $350. The junkyard had stripped it of its exhaust system and sensors. The police acted on our report, the evidence of the illegal substance, and the CCTV they found, which shows he the thief and a druggie. They arrested him. He was charged with theft and possession of illegal substances. The court denied him bail, due to his record and flight risk. So, he was remanded to jail. I, 28 female, find myself in a really tough spot and need some honest opinions on what I should do. My sister, 25 female, is getting married soon and my entire family is ecstatic. But I'm not. Her fiancé, 30 male, stole a business idea from me a few years ago and I'm seriously considering skipping the wedding because of it. Backstory: I've been working on a unique business concept for a few years and I told my sister about it. I thought we were close. Fast forward a bit and lo and behold, her fiancé launches the same damn business, basically stealing my idea and profiting off of it. This scheme is what is funding most of their wedding, for your information. I confronted them both about it and they played dumb, acting like it was just a coincidence. And they had no idea. I was furious, hurt and betrayed, but for the sake of the family, I decided not to press the issue any further. Now the wedding is approaching and my parents are pressuring me to attend after I mentioned to them that I want to skip it. They argue that family comes first and I should set aside my grievances for the sake of my sister's big day. On the other hand, I feel like attending would be a slap in the face, as I feel it would signal that what they did is forgivable and that I'm okay with being walked all over. So am I the jerk for wanting to skip my sister's wedding over this? Should I put aside my feelings and be there for her? Or is it fair for me to take a stand against what feels like a major betrayal? I am torn. Edit for information. A few of you really wanted to know what the business idea was. Well, I can't go into detail as it's pretty niche, would be easy to look up and find out a bit too much personal information on my brother-in-law. I can tell you though, it was an app idea. It's identical to the idea I was working on. Also, some people are defending my brother-in-law by saying that I wasn't going to go through with it. I have been taking part-time entrepreneurship classes at a local college. I was teaching myself how to build an app at the time. I told my sister about it and showed her what I was working on. He stole the idea before I had the chance to go through with it and sold it to his buds. Now he co-owns it. I think it's also important to know that I dabble in photography. And from conversations with my parents, it sounds like my sister wants me to photograph her wedding for her. But I have not heard anything about the intended payment for photographing her wedding. So by not going, not only would I be causing a bit of drama, I'd also be leaving them without a photographer, according to my mom. I never agreed to photograph. This was apparently assumed by my sister. And now some comments on the post. Someone saying you're not the jerk. This is based on taking you at your word that they ripped off a unique idea, making it hard for you to now use the idea for yourself without being in direct competition and looking like the one copying their business, putting you behind the 8 ball from the outset. They did betray you, and going would look like you were signaling that you were willing to let it be water under the bridge. The thing is, jerks count on time healing and hiding all wounds, and they may be counting on it. That you would come around and they will get away with it with no real consequences. You don't have to be pressured into just taking it because the rest of the family wants to celebrate the wedding and pretend that your sister and her soon-to-be husband haven't stabbed you in the back. If you don't want to go, don't go. Tell the family pressuring you that they are all welcome to go but to leave you out of it. Their betrayal is a real and a serious thing and you are not willing to go along with pretending it isn't. Just because acknowledging it is inconvenient when the rest of the family just wants to forget about it and celebrate. Your sister and her soulmate have done nothing to make things right and you're not going to give them a free pass on this level of betrayal. Another commenter goes with, "You're not the jerk." But I want to mention that I once told an old family friend about a niche business idea I'd had for a while. A couple of years later he comes by to tell me of this really cool thing he did. Exactly my idea. He's in the final stages and is super excited. I was mad for a bit, but honestly the man had absolutely no clue he'd heard it from me. He genuinely forgot but kept the idea somewhere at the back of his mind. And unlike me, he went and did it. So it is possible the fiancé is a complete jerk. or a distracted jerk who really thought he and your sis came up with it. Your feelings are valid either way because, well, they stole your idea. It all depends on the specifics, the reaction when confronted, and what they are like in other areas. If this is truly out of character, maybe. If hurtful but not that unexpected, well, you can tell better than I can. A third commenter goes with, "You're not the jerk. But as others have said, I think you need to decide if you want a relationship with your sister or not. If you do, then you might have to let it go. It's sad, but that's life sometimes." Side note, a good idea doesn't always mean a successful business. There is no guarantee you would have made money. Running a business is hard, and the initial idea is just the first step in a long road. But look on the bright side, OP. If you've had one great idea, well, you can have another one. Backstory: I work in a client services center and handle project planning and oversight. I have privileges and security clearances that even low-level management doesn't have, but I have no authority to delegate tasks or make requests. This is important because a low-level manager can order me to pull client-restricted data they normally don't have access to, while they have to go through their superiors to make this request. Technically speaking, once the request is granted, they can continue to request a restricted access report. It's a loophole that one of the low-level managers fully exploited. Introducing Tammy. She's one of 3 leads for our call center department. Tammy is very much the typical sneaky backstabbing person who has a chip on her shoulder for anyone standing in her way of getting what she wants. She made a series of requests for 2 separate reports. One report would detail one half of a piece of confidential order placement information, while the second report would detail the other half of the order placement information. By themselves, these reports were intended to spot inconsistency errors that might fall through the cracks. For example, show all orders placed from 12 a.m. to 11:59 p.m., but include personal client information on it. The second report shows all orders accepted from 12 a.m. to 11:59 p.m., but includes personal client information B. Tammy then combined the reports as they always match to get both sides of the order placement puzzle. This information was used to access client order pages and change data without the client being on the phone or without the client's knowledge. This is a huge no-no. As these things go, Tammy was discovered going into clients' orders as if she had their permission. Rather than confess to doing anything wrong, she threw me under the bus. OP gave me this information and does so daily. See? Tammy and I were temporarily suspended without pay until the investigation was over. It turns out no wrongdoing was discovered on Tammy's part or my part, and the loophole reports were stopped as they were irrelevant. Because of how the investigation was handled, it went on my permanent record, and my low-level government security clearance that I had earned was given a red flag. It was the equivalent of a major slap on the wrist, but no harm. No foul when it came down to the seriousness of it. Still, for her to throw me under the bus like that, I took it personally as she knew exactly what she was doing. She had me as a scapegoat in case she ever got caught. Nearly a year goes by and I was given a task for some forensic research on a closed-off, highly controlled database. Many department leads were involved, including Tammy, with whom I had little contact after the above incident. I took several painstaking weeks to sift through several 100,000 records. This was supposed to be routine data queries, but I found was different. A massive series of date errors that didn't match up to previously compiled reports taken from the time the orders were active. There were vastly different order placement turn times, most of which seemed to be handled by employees from a certain department led by a certain individual. This wasn't even what I was tasked to find. I just happened to come across it by accident. I reported it to my supervisors and was given the go-ahead to investigate further. It turns out that Tammy and several other leads in her department have been using the client order placement logins to manipulate order placement times weeks after the fact to make them look really good. Because the clients appeared to change the order date, No red flags were raised during the first investigation on active orders. They were manipulating past orders a little at a time. They were the top department for months on end because of this and even received bonuses and recognition. After presenting my thorough findings, our compliance department concluded that several leads/managers were fudging dates to make their departments appear better than they actually were. The result was a termination of a backstabbing individual named Tammy, the demotion of a lead who knew of the deception but didn't say anything, and a third lead had already left the company earlier in this year. I'm told that Tammy is also being sued for the bonuses and rewards she earned under false pretenses. The bonuses were over $5,000 for 1 year, which could be grounds for grand theft. I work at a charcoal chicken joint in a small shopping center with about 10 stores in it. The shopping center had a public bathroom on the other side. This is obviously run by center management and the cleaners they hire, and not by our chicken shop, which is on the other side of the complex and does not have a bathroom. A lady comes in with her baby and is absolutely livid. I am talking red with rage. It was just me working there because my coworker and manager called in sick for the day, so I was trying to think back to any mistakes I may have made and came up empty. She finally gets to the counter and starts yelling, telling me that I should be ashamed of myself. I ask her what's wrong and say that I can rectify the issue, and I just need her to calm down and tell me the problem. Apparently, she had gone to use a parent bathroom with her baby, and there was urine on the floor and baby stuff on a change table, and I need to go and clean it right this minute before someone gets AIDS, and because her baby needs a change. Well, I tell her, sorry, but I just work in a chicken shop. The public complex bathrooms are not my responsibility. I tell her she needs to knock on the cleaner's door opposite the bathroom and they will help. She was huffing about me wasting her time and being entitled, but leaves to go to the cleaner's room. At this point, I think it's all over, but no. About 3 minutes later, she comes back even more livid than before, and she yells, "The cleaner isn't answering. You need to do it now." I tell her I'm sorry, but I do not know where the cleaner is. I don't work under the same management, and again, the bathroom is not my responsibility. She keeps unintelligibly screaming things, so I left to get our record book out back and look at the emergency contacts to find the center manager. I apologize to the lady to try and get her to calm down and offer to call the center manager to see what can be done. I go out back to make the call and the manager picks up and I explain to her I've got a lady screaming at me about a dirty bathroom and I'm working my shift alone and she don't know what to do other than to call. She tells me she will call her cleaner and see what's up. She rings back to tell me the other cleaner didn't show up for his shift and the second cleaner is on break. I hang up and tell the lady that the cleaner will be back within 30 minutes, or she can go to the McDonald's across the street who also has a change table. This is not good enough for her. She reaches behind the counter for a bottle of cleaning spray and literally walks behind the counter to look at the back where she sees a mop. I'm standing there dumbfounded, processing the fact that she just walked behind the counter and she thrust the mop bucket and sprays at me and tells me if the cleaner is not here, it is my responsibility to go and mop it up. I tell her to get out of the kitchen immediately or I will call the police. And she stands there not moving, telling me not until I clean it up. At this point, I'm like, what the hell? And I tell her if your baby can't wait half an hour or the car ride home, go to the McDonald's. I am not cleaning it. My job is to cook fries and chicken and not to clean the amenities of an establishment I work for. She yells no, and so I threaten the police again. She stands there as if to call my bluff, but I reach for the phone and start dialing. She walks out the door yelling, and I think it's finally done now. Thank God. 10 minutes later, she shows up with a cop saying that I threatened her and her baby. I just gave the cops my statement and the video footage, complete with audio, and they arrested her for trespassing. That was probably the most insane shift I've worked. Keep in mind, while we were not busy at the time, there were customers trying to order and food being cooked the whole time.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.